ACP Training Systems podcast. We're just going to start with a bunch of questions first, just to kind of get this thing rolling, and let's just see what happens. All right, so we got a question on strengthening the overhead squat position for the snatch and the overhead squat. Well, you'll hear common that the overhead squat is the heart of the snatch. In a sense, I would say your best snatch should be one that's caught in the deepest of your overhead squat position. So if you are anytime trying to build strength in your overhead squat, one thing that you're going to always want to be mindful of is depth and stability, where a lot of times, I see this a lot in the CrossFit gym when we're doing like special like strength work type stuff. People are kind of sometimes thinking getting the reps done too fast, where you can spend a little more time working a better position. That'll have a lot more carryover into the snatch. And then as far as strengthening the overhead squat position for the snatch and the overhead squat, it's one of those time things, because you have like all those key components with your flexibility, midline strength, and all that kind of stuff. So with the squats, of all of them, overhead squat being the hardest, it has the greatest demand on all of them. So you can't get flexible overnight, you can't get stable overnight, and so those are those types of 10,000 hour type things where I like to say in CrossFit we have these 10,000 hour movements like burpees and thrusters, because you typically will go into any commercial style gym and you won't see a lot of those done, and you won't really see them much anywhere else, and so you get into a CrossFit gym and you start doing them, so you got to get a lot of that time to get better at them. So it's one of those time things. I have this itch. Any advice? Ben Gay. Don't do that. Don't do that. Let's see. Got a question from Amy. What's the best way to work on shoulder mobility at home to prepare for snatches and overhead squats? Great question. So a couple things you're going to want to have in your household that are very easily accessible and mobile. So you have a lacrosse ball, and then you also have a floss band. For example, you have a floss band is pretty much just like a thinner piece of rubber. It's not like the same resistance band that you would use to like use on a kipping pull-up or whatever. But what you can use these for is really wrapping them around some of those areas that go into the shoulder, like high up in the shoulder, and work some other positions like that. You could simply wrap your shoulder up with the band and put your hand on the inside of a doorway and open up the shoulders that way. And then you can actually also use this almost like a physical therapy band, even though it's not the exact same thing, but it can do close to the same thing. So you can do, pull aparts with it to really warm up the shoulders, where a lot of people kind of miss it in any overhead type thing, be it snatches, overhead squats, push presses, whatever, is warming up that joint first. Everyone wants to like just sit on the lacrosse ball right away or start foam rolling or flossing right away, and what you really want to do first is get those tissues warm and blood circulating so that you can make some change in those areas. So I would say get the lacrosse ball up on your traps and your lats and triceps to really open that up, and then also you can go through, which I'll have to make a video out of this, it's the bulletproof shoulders. It involves bands and weights and stuff, but like little weights where you could get like a 2.5 pound weight and really open those shoulders up prior to coming in. And you'll see your workout significantly change, because typically people come right from work to here and they're kind of cold, so we got to do a really thorough warm-up where you'll already be kind of warmed up. And from a general sense, we try to warm everybody up. But then from a specific sense, you might have some nagging areas. Like I have my left shoulder tends to give me more problems than my right because it separated worse than my right, but I separated them both. But yeah, you can definitely do something like that, and maybe even kick up into a handstand inside of your house. I mean, I know it's not probably great for the drywall, but if you use enough graceful approach to it and you wear socks, not shoes, you can hold that handstand to really feel a stable locked out position. I always like to use handstands to warm up my overhead position. How do you tell somebody at the gym their clothes smell really bad without being awkward? Wow, that's a good one. So, well, I would say number one, you'd probably want to bring it up to the affiliate owner, because you as the client it's probably not the best for you to go client to client. And then definitely don't become part of gossiping about it with other people. Like, man, so-and-so smells. Someone needs to say something. Yeah, I know, I smelled him the other day. Yeah, me too, me too, me too. Now you guys just created a greater problem, and that person might go away. But if you take the appropriate channel, I would say tell the affiliate owner or the head coach first and be like, hey, like, we really want to say something, or could you say something to him or whatever. And I would say put that responsibility on the owner or head coach, and they should go about that in their way, which if it were me, I'd pull that person off to the side and just kind of talk to them and be like, hey man, I'm not really sure about what your hygiene life is like, but you know, this is what I do to keep my stuff smelling good. And I'll just pretty much tell them what I do to keep my stuff smelling good and not necessarily tell them they smell bad. So then that way it's maybe a kind of a passive approach to saying like, hey man, my stuff smells really good and this is what I do. And I heard a lot of other people do the same thing. He might be like, man, I think I'm going to try that. Then again, if he doesn't follow that or she doesn't follow that, was typically not a she, then you'd probably have to be like, hey bro, we need to talk, like take a shower or whatever. That's a great question though. I've had a couple of nagging pains for a while and was wondering at what point is it a good idea to break away from training to heal up, or would it be better to modify training? I love this question. So CrossFit is infinitely scalable, and where a lot of people lose that in the big picture is scalable isn't always just, oh, this is the workout, let's scale it down. You know, you'll see in a lot of gyms, they have the RX weights, where in our gym, and I actually used to do that a while back, but I actually stopped doing that. And the reason for that is I wanted to give more education and insight to the client in regards of them getting a lot of work done regardless of the weight. Because work is work relative to that person. So if let's say I'm on a job site and there's a really big dude and there's a really small dude, this guy, and we got to move a whole bunch of pallets of sod or whatever it might be, there's a pretty good chance that when I'm moving, say, 6 of whatever I'm moving, he's probably going to move 10 because he's stronger, he has more ability to move that type of stuff. So that being said, that scalable piece goes up and down. I mean, it can go extremely high, the CrossFit Games. But that's, you know, that the CrossFit Games is not CrossFit, it's a test of fitness to see who's the fittest in that world or whatever. But your CrossFit general program shouldn't be like that. So should you take a break from training? I would say no. But now then again, you want to check with your doctor because it all depends on like the extremity, to the extreme of your injury. Like if it's like a nagging shoulder injury or something like that, I've had clients do that before and they're like, hey, I can't do pull-ups and I can't do burpees and I can't do this. You can modify those things down and still get a really good workout. You know, I had this lady one time that had a nagging shoulder injury. And she's like, should I still come in? I'm like, yep, you're going to do a lot of squats, okay, and we're going to get you on the Airdyne bike and on the rower. So it's going to be a lot of stuff that won't put your shoulder on tension. So like, let's say you had the rower on a 6 and you're like, ow, I feel that in my shoulder. Let's put it on a 3. Okay, I don't feel it there. And so what we'll do is we'll get you back, kind of wipe the slate clean. And what I actually find for the ones who actually continue to come to the gym and work through those injuries and actually listen and modify those workouts down is they actually find themselves coming back stronger. For example, about a year and a half ago, I strained my lower abdominal, and I thought I had a hernia, so I was just like, push it back in and get in the game. But definitely that's not the way to go about a hernia, and it wasn't a hernia, it was a strained lower abdominal. So heavy weights for me might not be heavy weights for someone else, and so anytime I'd go over, say, 270 pounds on a front squat, I'd feel like my lower abdominal was just going to explode. So finally I just kind of had to be like, well, let's just start from scratch. So I kind of stuck to what I know, and I said, all right, on Monday I'm going to do 3 sets of 10 front squat with 95 pounds. And for me, that's light. So like my 1 rep is with 345 pounds. And so I use 95 on Monday, 3 sets of 10. Then on Friday, 3 sets of 10 at 115 pounds. And then I just kind of kept on going Monday, Friday, and I don't think I ever got within maybe 70% of my 1 rep max over, I think, a 6 to 8 week time period. But by the time I got back, my lower abdominal wasn't strained anymore, and I actually PR'd my front squat by 10 pounds. And it was really kind of sticking to it and just modifying it down so much. I'm not saying more reps is better, but modifying it down and finding like that pain tolerance. Like when I was doing them, it was like, is this pain free? Does it feel right? Am I doing the right movement? If those 3 things were in check, then I continued to grow on that. So my thing would be communicate it, number one, to your coach specifically, like, man, my arm hurts. My arm hurts too, right? But where does it hurt? In here, in here, in here. Maybe there's something mobility we can do to fix it a little bit. But I can tell you at the end of the day, if you can't do a pull-up, it doesn't mean you can't get fit doing burpees, push-ups, ring rows, and something modified and going really hard. Think about if you did something as simple as a 95-pound deadlift for a guy, right? Take a really strong dude, a 95-pound deadlift for a guy, and you put 10 minutes on the clock, and you do 10 minutes, as many rounds as possible, 15 burpees and 10 deadlifts at 95 pounds, that's going to crush that guy if they're going hard. But if they're going slow and like overly pacing it, then they're not going to get much. So you're only going to get as much out of it as you put into it, but more weight is not better if it becomes injurious. So you still need to come in and communicate that with your coach so that, say it's a squat day and going below parallel hurts or something, then we can do something above parallel that's close to that. It's still not squatting, but it's still something. And that coach should be educated enough to be able to modify to whatever your limitations are. So definitely come in and modify because some working out is definitely better than no working out. And you definitely don't want to get caught up in, oh, I just need to rest. Because I'm a firm believer in the answer to becoming mobile again is being mobile, not by being immobile. So you might just have to not do certain movements in certain ways at certain intensity, but just change that up. All right, we've got another question. This is probably one that I'm going to have to make a completely different podcast for, but I can answer it in a good way quickly, but I find this will be a podcast in itself. So, volume in training versus intensity. That's awesome. So everybody thinks CrossFit's the CrossFit Games. Like, let's get over the fact that people come in and if you've been in CrossFit for a while, especially being an affiliate owner, you realize that your phone calls have changed in regards to what people are calling you for. I remember when in 2011, I'd get a call and the question was, what is CrossFit? And after a while, I kind of got tired of answering that question, like, what is CrossFit? Like, and you can't give them like, oh, CrossFit's constantly varied functional movements at high intensity. Like, you can't give them that answer. You got to just be like, you know what? It's really awesome. It's a group setting. It's a lot of fun. Come on in. And so I found myself in sometimes just saying something like that, and they're like, oh, really? Well, what if I can't do it? You can do it, and I'm going to work with you. Boom, they come in. Where now the question isn't what is CrossFit. They already know what it is. They think they do, and they see the CrossFit Games. They say, hey, I want to try CrossFit, but I can't do muscle-ups, I can't do handstand walks, and I don't know how to snatch a barbell. So now it's the battle of convincing people that CrossFit isn't the CrossFit Games and that fitness isn't the CrossFit Games. The CrossFit Games is a test of fitness, but your fitness is different than somebody else's. And so fitness, how CrossFit defines it, is work capacity across broad time and modal domains. In other words, being really good at a lot of things. And so where a lot of people happen sometimes, they get into CrossFit and they see the competitions and they want to do them, and I say, yeah, go do them. But you don't have to like add all this crazy volume into your training. And volume, I think that word is just silly in my opinion, which means train more. But a lot of people think like, oh, I want to get better at thrusters, so I need to do 100 thrusters today. It's like, I don't think you need to do that. You could practice getting better at a thruster by maybe doing ankle mobility, wrist mobility, and tricep mobility to get a better rack position, which will turn into a better thruster, and several other things. But more training is sometimes the enemy, and you'll find yourself getting sick of training, you'll find yourself getting bored of it, and you'll find out that that's what all you're doing now is training because of training. And I get it. You do have some people who can come in and be super competitive right away, but you have to really revisit, number one, what are your goals? And I can tell you right now that even me, gone to regionals twice, I've never been on this crazy like high volume program and all this kind of stuff. This year had a lot of fun with the Open. Didn't really sweat it as much. Did the workouts once on a Friday night, kind of broed out with the gym, didn't redo any of them, and just kind of gave it my best and just had fun and didn't do any special fancy training. Just, I like Olympic lifting, so I barbell lift probably 3 days a week, and I don't really have a plan. I just know that if I snatched from the hang on Monday, I probably don't snatch on the hang on Friday. I mean, it's really, for me, it's simple like that, and I've know my body well enough to still have enough fun and still be a decent CrossFitter. And then this year, taking 220th or something like that, I can say is not too bad in a pool of thousands of athletes. I'm not going to go around and talk about how great I did because I don't really care. But my whole point is that there's nothing special, super fancy in my training as far as volume. Like, oh, I did this many calories on the row or this many meters. I did this type of strength program with all these kind of percentages and waves. I just had a lot of fun doing CrossFit and just kind of being well balanced. You know, I know if I did muscle ups on a Monday, I'm not going to do them probably for the rest of that week. If I did pull ups on a Tuesday, probably won't do them again for the next week as well. The thing to that is that people can get really good at it to the point where I can say create a warm up, and I could say, all right, hey guys, let's do a 10-minute warm up, and let's go every minute on the minute. Let's do 5 burpees, and let's go 5 hang power cleans. So if you're in, say, like the general setting class, and you have all of your CrossFitters in there, odds are, because it's general, that's probably going to smoke some people. 50 pull-ups and 50 hang power cleans over a time span of 10 minutes. But for someone like me, if I'm doing like 95 pounds, or someone who's really advanced, that's just kind of greasing the groove, getting warm, because they've trained to that, they've developed to that. So if you have someone who's new and maybe doesn't have those skills, then they're going to come in, and that's going to be a high intensity WOD to them. And that's actually going to, you'll find that worsening their training. So the thing is getting very virtuous in all the movements and getting them all locked in, because you can't really start training high volume until you have a check in every single box. You know, general physical preparedness is always going to win, and you're not going to find an athlete who has a small weakness go that far anymore. Those days are over pretty much. Another question, how to approach an older adaptive / injured athlete? That's great. I would say first thing you'd probably want to do is set up a couple of free one-on-ones with them, because what you're going to really want to do is, if you bring them in right away, it might not help them, and it's definitely not going to help you. Because if they're adaptive, if they're coming into you injured, and when you say older for me might be over 60, because I think about when I'm 50, what am I going to be like? I don't know, but I don't plan to be the average. But you could get a guy who's 46, comes in your gym and is like an absolute beast. I have one of them. So I don't treat him like a older athlete. So you just, in general, it really all depends. I would say anyone who has severe limitations, if age is their limitation because they've allowed themselves to get a certain way, or anything, not allowed, but maybe their life has gone a certain way for a certain length of time, you have to be able to identify that as the coach and not be like, yeah, come on in, CrossFit's for everyone. I'm not saying that CrossFit's not for everyone, but you have to do your due diligence and say, hey, I think this is going to be a great workout for you. What I'd like to do, though, is to set some time aside for you and I to work one-on-one, because I really want to get some things tailored to you, because you just have some things that are very unique that I'd like to work on. And as long as you send that message correctly and not say like, well, you know, you're really old and I think you're going to struggle with this, so let's do, you know, like that's a different way to communicate it, and that's not going to help you. So you have to let them understand that you have their best interest in mind, and that you've seen something and asked some questions that got you to give them a solution. So I would say work with them one-on-one, and then kind of get them to a point to where you can get them in, in the right setting. And then, you know, sometimes people like the undivided attention. How do I increase my overhead squat? Another overhead squat question. I think I already answered that. Overhead squat is like the 10,000 hour, one of the other 10,000 hour CrossFit movements. You can't get better at it by not doing it and avoiding it. And there's so many other drills that you can do that take course in that. You got to ask yourself the number one question that's nearest and dearest to my heart is, what does your air squat look like? If your air squat sucks, there's a pretty good chance that your front squat sucks really bad and your overhead squat is absolutely horrible. So you have to kind of look down and say, all right, can I get my air squat better? All right, it's awesome. Let's get to the front squat. Is my front squat better? Not by the numbers, but by the position. Like, how does it look? How does it feel? You know, if it becomes comfortable to where you can do it well and you're in good positions, then that's going to constantly translate into long-term success in any lift that's more advanced. Let's go to this. Question from Beer League. What are your thoughts on high bar versus low bar position when it comes to back squats? So, Olympic lifters will use a high bar back squat all the time for the most part that I've seen. And it's because it's demanding of a upright torso, and you can't really lean forward in a high bar or that bar is going to roll on your neck and go over your head. So it's going to have a little bit more extreme demand on midline stability. With the low bar, you can lower that sucker down in between like your traps and your back part of your shoulder, and you can get away with a lot more lean, and so it's going to be a little bit more posterior, and you'll squat a crap ton more. So do I do low bar back squatting? I say maybe once a month I'll lower it down just to make sure I'm comfortable in that position, because if I have a 1 rep max back squat that I'm doing, say at a competition or something, or a CrossFit total, and they don't specify high bar or low bar, I'm lowering that sucker down and I'm going to put some serious weight on the bar, because it's from a mechanical standpoint, the bar's in a different position and has less demand on other things, which allows you to get more weight. I mean, that could turn into a guided discussion in itself, but high bar is going to have, in my opinion, more carryover into several other things, because you have to have more of an upright torso. So think of like your wall balls, your snatches, your overhead squats, and all those other things that you do. You're really building a stronger position for many things as opposed to a smaller amount. Anonymous question. How do you stay mentally prepared during the WOD? So I would say mentally prepared during a WOD, maybe it might not be the correct terminology. I would say something like, how do you stay mentally focused during the WOD? Because typically something like preparation happens prior to. So like, I don't typically prepare mentally during the WOD. I prepare before the workout. So how do I stay on track and stay focused with the plan that I created in preparation for the WOD? What I do a lot of times is I don't think about how bad it hurts, or I don't think about like, oh, this sucks. A lot of times I'm thinking about like, well, different scenarios. So like, if I'm just trying to get a better workout in, maybe a good score on an open workout, a lot of times I'm coaching myself. Like I'll feel myself go forward a little bit and I'll tell myself, get your hips back. Or I might feel my elbow hit my knee or something like that, and I'll say, keep your elbows up. So I'll kind of just coach myself through it. And then a lot of times, sometimes I'll think about a tougher scenario I've ever been in that outweighs the one I'm in. I mean, if it's something like a wall ball, a 20-pound ball, those are beyond mental. People hate them because they choose to, but at the end of the day, it's 20 pounds and your body weighs far more than that. So I'm not going to let something that's wrapped in leather and only weighs 20 pounds without a heartbeat defeat me. So those are the types of things I think about. And then sometimes in a workout, I will intentionally try to go almost too far to where I'm trying to find a new threshold, where a lot of times I'll use wall balls because people hate them. People hate them. So 150 wall balls for time, Karen. People right away think about, how do I want to break this up in order to finish on time? Where sometimes you could look at it and say, let me see how hard I can go to see how much I can advance myself into a new threshold, to where I always do this and I always break them up in sets of 10 or sets of 5 because that's all I can do. Well, it might not be all you can do if once in a while you push to find a new threshold, say like 25, 30, 40, 50, the difference is, I think, with those top athletes and the rest of everybody else, is that their threshold for being able to stay in types of those uncomfortable situations are far greater than everybody else. You take open workout 15.3, I think it was, with Ben Smith with muscle ups and wall balls and double unders. I think he did every round of 50 wall balls unbroken and his muscle ups unbroken. That's not just mental, that's also physical. Like, you can train that. Now, granted, he's at a way different level, but he's gotten himself to a point where he's pushed those margins so far to where we think 15, he thinks 50. And so his body now has been trained to that level to where it responds a certain way, but not the way we might. But we could eventually get it there by pushing it into that safely and not hurting ourselves. But definitely, so how do I say mentally prepared or mentally focused? I would say focus on your plan, and sometimes just realize, like, remind yourself that you could be at home just playing around and doing nothing, watching Walking Dead or something like that. I'm not really into that show, but I'm into The Office with Dwight Schrute. Finally, anonymous question. This one's great. Who scored higher on 15.4, Batman or Superman? Man. Well, let's say this question was who would score higher. This could get into a strong, strong argument. Here's what I think. Well, dang, I'm going to have to go with Superman on this one. And it all depends, because there's two scenarios you can look at this. Let's say they were picked for the open announcement. Superman would take him, because if they weren't doing it like unannounced, right, then you would get like more time to prepare. So if you have, if they were doing this in another setting to where they already knew the workout for like a couple days or two, I guarantee you Bruce Wayne, Batman, would definitely find a way to get some kryptonite, and he would definitely drop some in there and beat Superman because of that. But on the spot, I would have to say that Superman would take him just because Batman wouldn't have any time to prepare, and all the gadgets in the world wouldn't beat you. I mean, he's superhuman. So, scenario depending would dictate the winner of this workout. So, open announcement, Superman. Non-open announcement, Batman. Just that simple. So, I love your questions, guys. They were great. If you guys, if you can, please click on the subscribe button below so you can stay up to date with everything that we're sending out. We're going to be sending out some newsletters soon. We're going to be sending out video podcasts, and we're also going to find a way to put this thing on audio as well. But I appreciate all your questions. They're really fun, and I'm excited to bring you guys some more information. Have a great day.